I have two amber clip lights. This is the second amber clip light. And one red clip light. I have my passenger side combination turn hazard signal, front passenger side amber reflector, the middle passenger side amber reflector, and the rear passenger side red reflector. I would check to make sure all these items are of the proper color, that they are all clean and clear, not cracked or broken, and that all the items have proper screws and bolts, and that they are secure to the bus. I would remember to say I would check the other side the same way. We'll now check our emergency exits. I would point to them all saying I have my emergency exit windows clearly and legibly marked with lettering. Also, the outside emergency window exits have reflective tape as well. I would also remember to say I would check the other side the same way. I would check all my windows to make sure they are clean and clear, not cracked or broken, and that the rubber seals are not dry rotted, cracked, ripped, or torn, and that all the windows and molding is securely in place. Also to remember, I would say I would check the other side the same way. I would now check my reflector tape to make sure it's not damaged, attached, and secure. I would remember to say I would check the other side the same way. I would check my fuel tank and cage. I would check that the fuel tank is secured in the cage and that the tank and cage are not cracked, broken. The fuel cage is welded. I would check my fuel cap to make sure the seal is not dry rotted, cracked, and ripped, torn, and not leaking. I'd check to make sure that the fuel tank, fuel cage, and cap are all properly secured to the bus with all screws and bolts. I would check my frame and cross members from the front of the bus to the rear. There should be no cracks, breaks, wells, and isn't worn. The items are to be straight and the cross members are present so that the bus doesn't shift. There should be no holes other than the manufacturing holes, and I'd make sure that all items have the proper screws and bolts securing it to the bus. I would then say I'd check the frame and cross members in the front and rear the same way. I would check my drive shaft. It appears to be straight. It has no cracks, breaks, wells, and isn't worn. The U-joints and C-clamps are in place and greased. All the screws and bolts appear to be in place, and it is secure to the bus. The hangers are all present and there to catch the drive shaft if it should break and fall. The exhaust system, including the muffler, from the front of the bus to the rear appears to be straight. The exhaust has no cracks or breaks, no black residue indicating leaking. The clamps are in place and all of the screws and bolts appear to be present, securing it to the bus. We will now check our spring mounts, leaf springs, spring guides, and U-bolts. If you did this in the front, you can say the names of them and say, I have my spring mounts, leaf springs, and U-bolt, and I would check those the same way as I did in the front. Then you would say, I also have my spring guide. I would make sure they have no cracks, breaks, wells, and aren't worn. This item has the proper screws and bolts securing it to the bus. Then I would say I would check all these items the same way all around the bus. I have butted rims and wheels. There should be no obstructions between the tires and are properly spaced. The tires should have 85 to 95 psi of pressure. I'd check the pressure with a tire gauge. There shouldn't be any less than 2/32 of an inch tread depth. There needs to be even wear, and you can have recapped or retreaded tires in the rear, but they need to be the same size and matching. When you do this, point to the side of the tire. My tire shouldn't show any cracks, rips, gouges, bubbles, or tears. I'd check to make sure the rim isn't embedded in the tire. I'd check to make sure the rim wasn't dented or broken. The wheel seal shouldn't have any cracks, breaks, or wells, and no leaks. The lug nuts and wheel seal bolts should all be present and showing no rust trails, which would indicate looseness. I'd make sure that all the items in my wheel system are properly secured. Then I would say, lastly, I'd check the other side duals on the bus the same way.